Welcome to a Friday morning, the first Friday in the month of September. So joining me in the WDLB studio this morning from the city is Mayor Bob McManus. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are things going with the city here in the fall now where the events didn't happen? I suppose there's kind of an economic downturn. The ripple effect will still be felt for a while yet. You're working on budget, so I don't know how you know to put something together when you don't know what you don't know, I guess.
Yeah, that is exact. You just put it together perfectly. You don't know what you don't know, and when will you know? It's interesting because the budgets, they're being worked on. City Administrator Steve Barg is working with all the department heads, and Ron Alman is the finance director. I sat down with him, with Ron yesterday, and it's very, very interesting, the process taking place. And it will be the Common Council. Ron is going to do a presentation similar to what he and I went over yesterday at Tuesday night's council meeting. So I would really encourage as many people in the public to watch it. You could either watch it on Channel 991 on Charter, or if you don't have cable, then we Facebook Live the meetings. So you can go to Facebook Live and be able to see the entire meeting. His presentation is going to be important. It's basically where we're at. So until we know, he took the numbers of basically what we did last year as far as expenses and everything else. So we know roughly what it will be, but then there's always a lot of surprises. The state could come in and give us more money than we thought. That would be helpful. They could give us less. That's going to hurt. And all of those things don't come in until the very end. So many times, I remember last year, Steve had his budget completely made up. And I think 3 or 4 days before, he got word that something from the state was coming in lower. He had to go back in and tweak everything. So it's a wait and see. I've let everybody in the city know my position, which is I don't want to see a tax increase this year. Because of COVID, I just think there's only so much people can take. Now, having said that, you've got the reality of there's two realities. The other reality of the situation that we have is we've got to balance our budget, and the city has to work. We can't, we're making sure right off the bat to the department heads, don't ask for anything that's going to be fluff, if you will. We're going to run it bare bones, but you still have basic increases, wage increase, healthcare, just things like that. And we don't want to cut any services. So that's the thing. So you've got the one aspect, which is how do you bridge that gap? And then the other thing is, because of the huge mistakes that were made the prior 10 years, our Moody's rating got downgraded slightly. And so what they want us to do is they want us to fix this over 2 years. So my first thing to Ron yesterday was, I appreciate what they're saying, but it took us 10 years to make this mistake. Give us a couple more. And so when they say they want us to do it in 2 years, that means they want us to bridge the gap. Now, what is the gap? Our tax rate went up to $9.59 per thousand of property value last year. Now, we knew that in order for the not to deficit spend or to balance your budget, it realistically had to go to, I believe, 10.04. So that's a pretty, what is that, 45 cent difference. That needs to be caught up. Otherwise, we are going to be deficit spending this year. So, theoretically, you would need to increase. If Moody's had it the way they want, they call it, do you have the political will to make that bump over the next 2 years? And I've asked Ron to talk to them and say, give us 3 years and we'll fix it. Everybody is aware that expenses go up, but can we spare it this year? So this year we don't have a tax increase, and then the next 2 years it's kind of baked in.
Now, this is all pre-pandemic talk.
Yes. This is, well, no, this talk was had over the last couple of weeks with Ron and Moody's,
But
but
I mean, the numbers
yes,
that you're talking about
yes,
were accepting on that there would be as much revenue coming down as there has in the past,
correct.
which we're just about certain won't happen.
Well, a large portion of the income that we received is from property taxes, and the county makes us whole on those property taxes every year. So if people aren't making their property tax payments, the county absorbs that. And then after 5 years of non-payment, then the county would do certain things. So we will still be made whole on that, which is a good thing. The other things, you're exactly right. So we've got a couple of things there. We've got to get this budget balanced. And so then I looked into, okay, let's just say hypothetically, last year it was 1.8 million. Let's just say hypothetically this year it is $1 million. Okay. So then can we do, after we get the budget, can we go in and do some budget cuts for 400,000, let's say, and then borrow the other 600,000? And the thing is, you cannot borrow for the daily operating expenses of what you have. So that's the rub. So I believe that there are ways that we're going to be able to get this done, but it's going to take it's going to take a lot of work. This budget season is going to be boy, those council meetings, I would imagine they're going to be hot because there are some people that say that some of the council members are just against raising taxes at hello. And then you've got others that are like, we've got to make up for lost time for 10 years of not doing it right. You've got to make up for that. And so we're looking at ways to get that done. So who knows what it's going to be. I just want the citizens to be informed of what is taking place. So it just doesn't get towards the end of the year and now we're hit with a tax increase. The other thing I think is very important to remember when citizens here in Marshfield get their tax bill, it's not just the city. There's 3 jurisdictions, if you will. There's the city portion, the county portion, and the school district portion. So the city, when the city's taxes go up, that's just on the portion of the city tax. So we're really hoping to keep our part down to, the way I want it to be. I want it to be 0. I'm going to fight for that. I'm hoping that we can get there. Having said that, I'm not lost on the fact that we're facing that 50-cent deficit at hello. Even if the numbers do come in good, we've still got to fix that. And but I believe we could do that over 3 years, just not this year.
I find it admirable, but cut your way out of a deficit is painful, to say the least. And I don't know who's going to bear that, what departments, and like you said, wages and other healthcare can't be because it's baked into the contracts and things like that. So I don't know. You don't want to pass it along, but I see what some of the council members are saying, that this increase is just now becoming a bigger increase, a big thing because of what we didn't do in the past.
Correct.
And I don't ever see those rates going down. When does your taxes go down? Well, when does anything get any cheaper? So
right.
That's when they will, because just like anyone else, the city's budget is for things that cost. So,
right.
And the cost of everything, vehicles, tools, whatever, but goes up.
And you have to have a plan, because the fear that some might have is if you say it's a 3-year plan, then are you kicking the can down the road? So if you don't stay to that 3-year plan, then in essence you are. I guess my overall sense is, I'm hearing from, I'm very worried about a lot of people here in the city. I got to tell you, I'm worried about people being locked up in their homes, and I've heard of reports, not necessarily of here in Marshfield, but there are some people that are in the senior community in the surrounding areas that are really failing to thrive. They can't see their family members. They're at a place where an assisted living place, and they can't see family. That's not good. Just for there, and I was on a call yesterday with Sean Becker, the Wood County Sheriff, and their inmate population is rising, and a lot of it is domestic related. I mean, this pandemic is really taking its toll. And here's the thing, I'm a numbers guy. I don't know why I like the calculator so much, but I keep the numbers. I've kept the numbers since day one on my computer of how many new people, how many people tested positive for the virus, how many tests were run, blah, 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 how many people went into the hospital that day. And with testing, you look at testing one of two ways. Well, look, you had your percentage rate is 9%. Yeah, well, you didn't do that many tests. But the amount of numbers, or the other way is, boy, look, you got 1,000 people. Yeah, but the infection rate was only 5%. So you could play that game. The game you can't play is when you every day, and I will say the state of California has a tremendous website, and as Wood County does as well. They show you the amount of people going into the hospital every single day. That number has stayed about the same. The average is from the day they took it in. So what's really interesting is you've got testing going like this. We're on radio. You got testing going very high, very low. You've got the amount of infections, people infected on a daily basis, going very high, very low. But that number that's constant is 2. The amount of people going into the hospital on a daily basis, which is averaging about 30 to 35, and the amount of people, sadly, that are passing away. That daily number has not changed. That daily average. Some days there's 13, 14 people, sadly, that pass away. Other days, 0. But the average through the whole time is pretty much the same. That tells you something. And if you look, the last I looked, the amount of people in the hospital from COVID for the entire state is 294. And out of that, about 100 are in the ICU. And last I looked, Wood County, not Wood County, but the North Central region, which is 12 counties, had, I believe it was 23 people in the hospital, and of that, 11 are in the ICU. That's for 12 counties. And you just look at our seniors, you look at what's happening in our jails, and you look at the disruption to kids, and it's like, we've really got to get this thing under control. I'm very concerned with what is once this virus is contained, what this long-term effect is going to be. It's going to be extreme.
I think that we're only, as you mentioned here, in so many words, the ripple effect of how long this is going to go down the road. And 45% of small businesses won't be here. I thought that was a huge number. Now, I don't know where they pulled that out of, but evidently surveys, or when you talk to people that are in small business, they're like, I'm hanging on because of stimulus and but I don't know that the numbers of customers are ever going to return to what I need to make it go. So the numbers we're playing right now may or not mean anything in the long run because of how things are going to. Will people participate?
Right.
In whatever it is? And who knows? It's up to you whether you feel safe or don't feel safe. And that's the hard part, is that you don't have a quantifiable number that you can use because it's all opinion.
Right.
When people decide to go out or not. But as far as the city is concerned, the impact on small business may be then that there will be not only less sales tax, but also opening in real estate of less rent or taking in property tax on an empty building as opposed to the one that was filled. Does that change? We talked last time, and I don't know if you're just watching or listening here, go through the whole rehash of dark store What that means is when a store moves out, like Walgreens did and built a new store, or when a Walmart builds a new store, they have the old store. And it's pretty tough when you have a specific building like that to get renters. Now, here in Marshfield, we've had, finally, after years, the Walgreens store has been vacated now or is being used. And so that's back again, at least it's property. But these companies wanted to have their open store taxed at the rate of their closed store. What about downtown? Is that the same situation whereby there's less tax on a dark store than on a operating store? Do we lose revenue other than sales tax?
No, because the value of a business is based on its sales, or the real estate is based on comparable sales. So those things have not changed. And in the dark store theory, it's really quite upsetting, to be very honest with you, how stores that we all support, not just, when I say we all, I mean not just here in Marshfield, but I mean all across the country. We support Walmarts, and their profits have gone up dramatically over the last 6 or 7 months. And so in the dark store theory, a store like Walmart wants to say that their property the value of their property should be based on a similar property that's empty. That just makes no sense at all. I mean, it's a way to get to try to get your taxes lowered, but it does not help your community a bit. And they've got deep pockets, obviously, and so they can fight those things. And it just, for me, it just makes no sense, because if the expenses of the city are going to remain the same. So if we would lose, say, $100,000 in tax revenue from there, well, then guess who that goes to? The people that support that store. And then their profits go up. That just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm all for businesses and people wanting to have every advantage and loophole, if you will, that they can. Good for them. But when it gets excessive like that, you can't do that in real estate. You could take, say, you've got a five unit building that's empty. Well, how do you value that? You value that based on a gross rent multiplier of what neighboring properties that are renting their properties for, what their average rents are, multiply that by 5 and a couple of other methods there, and you're going to come up with a value. And you don't compare it to other vacant buildings. That makes no sense. However, that's why they call it the dark store theory, is because they're trying to get a reduction in taxes.
As you were speaking, the light bulb just went on over my head, and I understand what their lawyers are arguing now. And that is that if I owned a building downtown, and whether there was a store in it or not, the value of the property would remain the same.
Right.
And that's what I'm paying taxes on.
Right.
The value of that property, whether there's a store in it or not. So what they're saying is, well, why don't we pay at the dark store rate as opposed to you've changed the rate of taxation by the viability of the business inside of it.
Right.
So I get what it just dawned on me. Now, your point is well taken, which means that the hit that local communities would take would be tremendous, especially on a building that size.
Correct.
But I now understand what their lawyers are arguing. The property is the property, the bricks are the bricks. Whether there's a business in it or not, the value of the bricks in the store are the same, which really isn't true.
Correct.
Because it is more, sell a viable business or sell a business that's practically out and see how much you get for it.
Right.
But they're saying that's irrelevant because you're taxing on the bricks.
Correct.
So I understand what they're doing. It would be tremendous for us. Talking with Mayor Bob McManus today on the Inside program, this first Friday in the month of September. You know that if you're listening live, and we're talking about the budget that will be presented or what did you say, the budget method, or how would you say it to be presented on
He's going to give an update on the upcoming, kind of where we're at financially. A lot of the last several meetings have been getting us ready for, you know what I mean?
You're preparing people for...
We're having the appetizer and the dinner salad.
Yeah, before it all comes in one time.
Yeah. Because the budget itself, I think we're supposed to get it on October 16th, and that's, it's a 300-page document. And you go through, and I've already got some ideas of where I want to go and make some cuts, if you will. It's going to be enough to make the increase? No, but I'm just thinking if we can get that overall amount down to where it's manageable, I think it'll be. And I've got to be respectful to the department heads because they are already putting together their budgets, getting it down as far as they can. So it's very, very frustrating for city staff. And that's one thing I've learned on council is I'm very proud of our city staff. I mean, they are Dan Connect and his crew, Josh and Justin Casperson. They just got I believe a $340,000 street grant. And that's just so helpful. I mean, that's a lot of money. Unfortunately, when you hear 348,000 or whatever, you think that's a lot of street. It's actually not a lot, but it's really helpful. We do about $2 million worth of road work during the construction season, road construction season, if you will. And so that really helps. That means we can do 200,000 and then add that 348. So there'll be more road work done. That's very, very helpful. And so when they put together these budgets and they've already done a lot of painstaking work, and Steve Barg and Ron Alman, I mean, we're not talking, they don't get together on a weekend and put this budget together. This is months. And then it comes to council. And, then the council's like, well, can we do this? Can we do that? And I'm very sensitive to the fact that I know our city staff and Steve Barg and Ron, I know they've already done as many cuts as they possibly could. And they've been working on with this for months. So it's a different thing. But I will say this, the public needs to see that we're not just going, oh, yeah, okay, spend whatever and just increase the rate and here we go. They can't. If we didn't have COVID this year, then there would, I believe, that there would have been we know there would have been a tax increase because we have to get from 959 to 1004. So do we want to do that all in 1 year? No. So we go up 25 cents a year. People don't feel it. I mean, Jeff, if back in those 10 years, if they just would have raised the property tax up by 10 cents, we wouldn't even be having this problem. And assuming that they didn't make a mistake in the books the way they did. Didn't happen. So we're to the point now where you can't cry over spilled milk, but it's kind of like when you get a diagnosis. Okay, all right, now we know what's there, we know how it got here, but now we got to work on the solution. And that's really where we're at. We have to fix this, and we're gonna.
And in these pandemic times, who knows what the last little slice will be here of how you're going to make this happen. And as it gets closer. The reason I bring it up is that as you're watching us right now, the meeting and the presentation we're talking about may be over because this runs on channel 989 on your Spectrum digital tier, and it will run throughout the month as we're being videoed here right now, talking with Mayor Bob McManus on this first Friday in September. And it's that time of the year when there's orange cones everywhere. We'll talk more about that coming up. You can join us, 384-2192, 384-2192 on the Insight program. AM 1450 WDLB's Inside program, the first Friday in the month of September. As I always say, you know that if you're listening live, but for those of you watching us on video here in the future, instead of Back to the Future, I'm trying to talk to future here on how I think it's going to be. and trying to keep my head around that as well here on Channel 989 on your Spectrum Digital tier as to the things that we talk about here on the program. You can join us, 384-2192, 384-2192, talking about the forever budget, it seems like. And we have not only, and we don't know what the pandemic will bring in cuts. I can just about be assured that we didn't take in as much money because of safer at home, and what that will mean for the trickle-down effect to municipalities as we take in money, and the federal level too, for that matter. I don't know if there will be less or more grants. I can't imagine there'll be more of anything at this point in time, but then trying to do it with the budgetary shortfall that you had and still trying to live under that situation as well has got to be extremely tough. And as we round out the year here, we'll know more how you're going to do that. One of the things you mentioned was roads. And it seems like here we are in September. We should be pretty soon wrapping this stuff up, but we're rolling around the barrels still yet across the city here. But I've seen a lot of projects happening.
A lot of projects happening. I don't know if you've been up McMillan since it got done, but boy, that's really nice compared to well, it's really nice, but it was horrible the way it was. And then there's one just starting over. I've had a few calls on this one, the one just starting over on Peach, just south of 4th Street by the middle school. And we're starting that just in time for school starting. And that happens in the way programs get put together, depending on order of importance. I mean, you try your best to coordinate them, but those are all of our street projects have gone very smooth this year, so that's been good. And our cost, one thing in talking about the budgets, our costs, haven't been as much. So it's good. So we're hoping when you read your weather report and whatnot through the winter that you keep the snow away. I don't know how you do that, but give it a whirl. Keep our costs down. I mean, that stuff does help.
The amount that you pay for that, you said, is you're staying within budget? Is it because of the construction companies need work, or why are you coming in under budget on some of these?
Well, I'm not.
Or did I misinterpret?
I mean, the one thing is for sure. For instance, in the aquatic center, if you've gone by there, I mean, there's bulldozers everywhere. That was advantageous because with contractors out of work, or big businesses like that having a lot of projects canceled and whatnot, then when a new project comes up, they really sharpen that pencil, and that worked out really well. So we don't know if that's what happened because of the streets. It's just that everything right now appears to be running very smooth.
Now, the way I understood it in years past was that the city doesn't own all the equipment. They're not street makers. There's some subcontractors that
Right.
are involved in as well in putting down pavement. So you have to work with their schedule,
Yes.
when we would like to do certain streets, not by schools, not major arterials at certain times of the year. That sometimes is out of the control of the city.
Correct.
Because you have to get other people in there to do that. We do have a majority of the equipment, but on the other hand, there will be some subcontractors that'll make that happen, and pavement is one of them.
Right.
We can't afford to have our own pavers, even though we already take a hit with the snowplow budget. I mean, that's a gimme. Nobody would bid on that.
Yeah.
So there's no way we can buy our equipment that American Asphalt can do.
Right.
And they're the ones who run that.
Right. Correct. It's interesting because you started off your this segment when you said that, and it caught my attention. You've had my attention on that when you get shut down, you're not going to have as much money coming in and things like that. My position on that is, if you shut something down, you pay for it. And so that's not a for or against the shutdown, but that is a very clear thing. If you're going to take municipalities and businesses and everything out. If you're going to take them out of business, then you've got to you can't take them out of business and then not pay the obligation that you're used to. You just can't do that. So where that lands, whether it's going to be the county, the state, or the federal, at the end of the day, it's the governors. It's the governors who close down a state. The federal government can make recommendations and things like that. We've seen the Fauci's and all these other folks, and they can make recommendations. But at the end of the day, it's the governors that close down a state. And I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican governor. I don't care. But if you're going to close it, then don't, at the same time you close it, don't pull the rug out and not fund everything as well. There's all kinds of emergency relief money, and so hopefully they'll go get it. I just saw one today that it's one of our senators is putting in $120 million relief fund for restaurants, which I think is great. And that, there you go. There's money there. So it's just going to be, how they get it done.
There's no money there. That's my money. And he's taking it from somewhere else.
True.
So it's, and because on the city level, it's the same thing. There's only so much sand in the pile here.
Right.
So what are we going to cut, and what realistically are areas you can? We talked about what you can't. Can you put off a road project for another year? Can you quit buying equipment for a year? Do you put a hiring freeze on? None of which are all that palatable to people.
Right.
But where can you not spend?
Well, when you get into, okay, let's kick our road projects back for a year, the ripple effect of that is brutal. Let's make the machines work for an extra year or two. The ripple effect of that is something that for our big equipment, every time it goes out, it's billed. And so that money then its billed goes into a separate fund so that when that $250,000 truck needs to be replaced, it's not a new expense. It's out of what we billed it for. So there's a lot of great things that really that take place there to keep that all down low. The other thing is you really can't go 10 to 12 years without a minimal tax increase, because as we've talked about many times, you're going to have employee costs that go up, or healthcare, or other things that go up. Everybody's expenses go up. So that's why it's trying to keep it all straight is incredible. And that goes down to our businesses. And let's see, earlier in the week there was Mackey, the Marshfield Area Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the leader of that is Scott Larson. I will tell you what, Scott is such a tremendous asset to Mackey and really to the businesses here in Marshfield. He's got a very reserved demeanor, but I will tell you what, he stays on top of things. We're very happy to hear that the unemployment rate, I think I heard earlier today on your shows, are down around 8.4. And that's nationally. I mean, in Wisconsin, Scott says it's right around 5.25. So that's promising. But he does a lot, as well does Mackey, to help businesses. And we just had the Small Business of the Year, Hewitt Meats. And it was listening to John speak, one of the owners of Hewitt Meats. That's a fourth generation business. Originally, it was just meat processing with just 2 employees, and now I think they have 17 or so, and they have a beautiful processing plant here in Marshfield and another small retail shop up in Tomahawk. And he was talking a lot about, over the last 6 months, what they've had to retool and reinvent, and that is business. That is, and COVID business has to do that anyway, retool and reformat things. When COVID came out, just for them to stay afloat, many businesses had to change their complete business model. Our restaurants, many of the in-house or the sit-down restaurants, Nuts Deep, Krabby's, places like this, at the Rivers, Hotel Marshfield, a lot of different restaurants, Lumberyard. They had to take their business model from sit-down dinner to carry out, and they had to do it, and they had to come up with this in a matter of 2 days. And when they did that for the first couple of days, there was glitches. Obviously, they're retooling. Oh my gosh, we don't have enough styrofoam things to go out. Okay, and then they got it. And it's constantly changing, and that's the nature of business. That's the nature of what we're going through with these budgets. And this is why I'm hopeful. And I will say this. The citizens of Marshfield have been so gracious to our local businesses in, having takeout orders and visiting when they could and all these different things. Really has been incredible. And I'm really hoping that citizens of Marshfield will continue to do that and really consider, we have the holidays coming up for those that celebrate Christmas. If you're going to get gifts for someone, really consider a gift card from a different business and make that a goal this year. Let's really help them through. Everybody's been through a lot. So if we can help each other with that, it would be tremendous. But if you look at Hewitt Meats, their whole business model, they used to be a processing plant. Now they've got this retail outlet with all the great meats and all the different kinds of brats. And jokingly, I asked him the other day, because Ron Wilczek, which is the president of one of the executive committee of Mackey, he was listing off all of the different types of brats that they have. And I said jokingly, do you also have sriracha? In which case he said yes. So I went and got some later on that day. But that's just that's the ingenuity and the inventiveness that a business has to do. It's really controlled chaos.
Tell us about your remarks at the small business dinner that morning. What were you focusing on?
I was, first of all, I was thinking there were a lot of business owners there because it was a small business award, much of their family. And I really believe that small business is really the engine that gets everything through. Through this entire pandemic, the small businesses have continued to go, and they, they're a major employer, and they might only have 5 employees, but when you've got a couple hundred small businesses with 5, it really is helpful. And I just let them know I was very proud of them. We stand behind them and continue to go. And fortunately, so far, here in Marshfield, we've been pretty fortunate where most businesses are doing okay. And we can get them through this. I'm going to be very happy for that. But you could see concern. You could definitely see concern. So people are very focused in doing what they need to do.
The opposite of small business is chains and national retailers. And at this point in time, I don't know very many, especially retail, that are doing any kind of brick and mortar, that are expanding in that direction. The amount of online business that has transpired, and people were, I don't want to say forced, but they became acclimated more so now to doing that than ever before. It was a big concern in towns like this around the country before, when Cyber Monday came around after Thanksgiving, and
Correct.
People in town are going, man, if you don't come down here, I'm losing market share here because people are finding a way to do it. And now this pandemic has just kind of pushed them or educated them in that manner. Everything from, still the grocery stores are selling groceries, but they're doing it in a different way, as you mentioned now, the adaptation that has to take place. But small business, I don't know if they're going to be able to hang on through the new version. Have people found a better and easier way to do things?
Well, they absolutely will have to go down the road of online. And I know Mackey, as well as Main Street, has really been trying to help businesses with getting that online presence, because people do buy online. People don't necessarily want to go out. So many of the small businesses I know have websites. At Hewitt Meats, they were saying one of the things that they brought on was an online presence, and they do quite well with that. Wenzel Wenzel Farms does as well, and they've had to acclimate to that. But the small business, the small dress shop or makeup store or jewelry store, they're going to have to, and many of them already do, they're going to have that availability. There wasn't long ago that on Central Avenue there in Main Street, the businesses were only open from 8 to 5 or 6 and not closed and not open on Saturday and Sunday. Well, if those are your hours and you don't have a website, that's going to be really difficult because for many people that are working, they can't take the time off of work to go visit your store. So you've got to have that online presence. At the same time, there are people that still like to go into that small boutique shop to try on their outfits and that social interaction and whatnot. They are there. So I don't know that that's ever going to go away, but business definitely evolves. I mean, when I was a kid, the telephone's there. Some people aren't going to know what this is, but the rotary phone where you put your finger in a little thing and it went and tick, tick, tick back. And look how that has evolved. Those aren't made anymore, and many people don't even have landlines at their house. They've just got their cell phone, and their cell phone has more. I've got an iPhone. That iPhone has more computer power than a computer I bought retail 10 years ago right here on my hand. So if you're not keeping up with that from a business standpoint, it's going to be difficult. Now, there are those people, though, that they don't want that kind of, they don't want an internet, and they don't want a computer. Well, they're still going to go brick and mortar, but they're less and less.
Yes, exactly. It's getting harder and harder for people to do that, because even the businesses that want to be open, and certain business models are that way, that have a door to swing to walk into, it's becoming more and more difficult. And for the city, again, getting back to that property tax, we look at the offices now. The discussion that we had today was, with less people going to the office to do their work, we found out that maybe we can do it from home. Maybe we can have Zoom meetings. How would we do this? Well, we've figured it out. Now we're thinking, well, maybe that's not such a bad idea to continue. So less people going to the office. Now office space is beginning to open up. And then that trickles down to retail space opening up. And so at some point in time here, this budget contraction that's happening under the way we used to do business, I don't know if the city can tax cyber business. So who gets the money off of that is the question that becomes.
Well, and that's that long range outlook that you have is a very real outlook. We are finding that there are more people working from home, and that has positive things for some and negative, because again, they don't get necessarily the social interaction. There comes a question of productivity, and for some people are a lot more productive at home because they can go down to work in their pajamas and get all their work done. And so it's a wait and see. But you bring up another point of how businesses are changing. So for instance, and when we were talking about restaurants, there were some restaurants that found out that when they went to takeout only, they had a higher margin of profit because they didn't necessarily have all of the expense. So do they just go to a takeout situation? That could be something that they do. The other thing for a business, a brick and mortar business, do they need to pay for the expense of a retail shop, is what you're talking about, or a business office, as opposed to just hiring somebody and have them work virtually, which is harder to do for people when they train or when they're new to a company. But I'm not going to be surprised if it goes that way and more Zoom meetings and everything else. Certainly, you can imagine big companies that do sales that used to have salespeople in airplanes and going all over the country and all this. I mean, certainly they're looking at their books to say, okay, our sales have stayed the same. Our salespeople are here, but they're having their meetings. Do we need to go back to having so many people on planes? And now you hit the air. I mean, where this could go is, who knows?
Talking with Mayor Bob McManus about how all this affects the city as the world as we know it today, because the budgets need to be sustained. Where you lose some, you save some. Where you saved on travel, you're talking about the business traveler, you've saved on all of that money, but you've lost on revenue. Who knows? 384-2192. Take one last break here. 384-2192 on the Insight program today. AM 1450 WDLB's Inside program coming to you this first Friday in September. You may be watching us here on video throughout the month of September on channel 989 on your Spectrum tier. So I say that because even today, I don't know if I'd say a majority, but a good portion of what we talked about will already have been resolved by the time you watch the program. So these things have probably wound their way through what's going on. But if you're listening live, 384-2192. 384-2192. As we talk with the mayor, he avails himself to us once a month. We've been talking about budgets and road construction and the effect that pandemic will have on businesses and what effect then that will in turn have on the city, how it looks, how we do business. With all these amenities that we like to have around here, I always say that it's not just about bringing doctors to town, it's about the bringing business to town. You know, when you come to Marshfield, I don't know that there's anything specifically unique other than downtown stores. Walmart's a Walmart, Target's a Target. You know, Shopko's gone everywhere. So is there anything that's here that would bring people in? And we had for years an online business that, well, it was catalog business and Figgies. Mm-hmm. And now that's no longer here anymore. If there was ever a business that was seemingly was set up for it, I don't know how Penny's went out of business when that was just switched from catalog to online, and it seemed like it would have been a no-brainer, but I understand that it didn't happen. So here we are now with a lot of empty spaces. And I don't know with brick and mortar that they're ever going to be refilled again, because we're finding different ways to do business here in the world today. So where does that leave cities like this with empty Office Max stores? It's pretty tough to get somebody to come in there when now their business model just went more online than what it was before.
Correct. You'd be surprised at the amount of interest in certain things, and there's a new development that will be going in. Marshfield is, it's very interesting because it's almost like there's two worlds. There's the people that live in Marshfield that have a certain, thing. We love this city. A lot of people say, are there things to do? And we're working on that. But I will tell you, the outside public has a different view of Marshfield. It's really quite interesting. There's a lot of people that really want to move here. When you've got the school system that you have, both public and private. I mean, our elementary, grammar or middle school and high schools, both public and private. The UW Wood County here in Marshfield, and the tech schools. You got Columbus and the high school and whatnot. Those are a huge draw, and with other amenities that are going on. One thing that's very interesting about business, we had you remember the controversy on the hotel going a while ago. Why would a hoteler like that want to come? Nobody could figure it out. Well, the reason is, and this went very deep into looking at it, is the average hotel occupancy here in Marshfield was, I believe, at 66%, and that was the average. I mean, there are some that were at 100% all the time. In Rapids, Wausau, Stevens Point, it was in the low 50s. So a hoteler looking at that goes, that's a real big thing. But that wasn't even the biggest thing, Jeff. The average hotel price in those other three cities was at about $71. The average in Marshfield was 110. So here you have higher occupancy of hotels and higher amount being paid. Why are those people coming? And there was a lot for that. A lot of people would come to the baseball tournaments, and a lot of different things going on with those baseball tournaments. I mean, even this summer in COVID, even though the city did not sponsor any of them, there were a lot of baseball tournaments here filling up hotels. And so the reason we want to do things like the aquatic center is when people come to visit, they'll stay. They'll go, yeah, I think I'd like to live there. You look at the amount of apartments that are being built over there behind Walmart. Phase one, they had 100 and I think they did 125. They're going to do 4 phases. They wanted at the end of year one to be at a 40% occupancy. They were at 97% occupancy of those brand new apartments. That's unheard of. And there's an attraction here to Marshfield. It's a safe city. People enjoy coming here. We could always do better. We're always going to strive to do better. But it's a pretty awesome place to live.
And when it comes to that, there's that trade-off between, do we need more rental, or how's our housing market? Are we selling anything? Are we keeping anything going as far as, the number of sales? And do we have inventory and all of those things that go into real estate? And does it affordable enough? Because when you buy, you're going to stay a while. When you rent, it's because you want to be liquid enough that you can move in case of a job situation. Well, listen, thanks for taking the time to visit with us here this month. Again, here on the Inside program, always a good time.
Yep, thank you very much.
Mayor Bob McManus here this first Friday in the month of September on AM 1450 WDLB's Inside program. I'm Jeff Cannon.